This is the Under the Ring Report. And now, the anonymous general managers of wrestling podcasting, John the Flesh Wound and Cousin Tom.
All right, wrestling fans, we are back here on the Under the Ring Report. Tom, what's up?
Oh, not much. I'm currently enjoying nice weather, and I'm sure when I wake up tomorrow, it'll be 6 inches of snow, which will melt by the next day and be 80 degrees.
Illinois weather for you, man. Sounds like you're having yourself a great time. But yeah, here it's just ice, snow, cold weather, warm weather, whatever. I'm ready for summer. Bring it on.
Yeah, me too.
All right. So, a couple weeks ago, I kind of did a quick in and out just talking about my very first live show. And so you were like, damn it, man, I want to talk about mine. So, last week we were mostly wanting to discuss the whole Dean Ambrose, Hideo Itami, things like that. But I told you I was going to give you your chance to talk about your very first one. Besides that, though, after that, I want to talk about some other events. I know some live events I've been at that I've kind of forgotten, had to jog my memory. So we'll kind of talk about some of the events we've been at and how memorable they may have also been. But go for it, man. What was your very first show you were at?
My very first show came later in life when I could actually afford to buy my own ticket. Because when I was a kid, there was shows in Decatur at the Civic Center, which you went to.
Yep.
That I never got to go to for whatever reason, just timing or just didn't have the chance to go. So my first show I actually got to go to live was with your brother and a buddy of mine that I used to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in February of 1998, and we went to the Prairie Capital Convention Center in Springfield, Illinois, which I think is now called something else. I don't even know. I'm sure it's changed names. But it was a WWF live event, which they didn't call it live event back then. It was just WWF in Springfield. And on that show, I got to see Mark Merrow. And I bring him up because that's when Sable was at her just starting to peak in popularity. So, I mean, there was people standing on folding chairs to get a glimpse of Sable coming down the ring. We had the Headbangers. Bradshaw was there. Farouk. That's when the Nation of Domination was in effect.
Yep.
Got to see The Rock. And I think he faced off against Ken Shamrock. And The Rock was in the Nation at that time, too. Because I have a photo somewhere of the Nation holding up their fists.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I have. I've been looking for that everywhere, but I know I have it because I remember taking the photo. And the main event that night was Owen Hart. I got to see Owen Hart in person.
Nice.
So, quite a few Hall of Famers. I don't have the card in front of me to be able to rattle all of them off, but still, it was a good deal. Sat on aluminum folding chairs. We weren't that far from the ring, maybe 12 rows. It's a small convention center, maybe 2,000 people there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good time. A lot of fun. And then after that, I didn't go to another house show for years. I mean, I take that back. That was 98. And the next time I went to a show, I went to a Raw is War show at the time. It was the Savas Center or West Scott Trade Centers where the Blues play in St. Louis.
Okay.
And I took my wife, God bless her. and
she really loved you.
Oh yeah, we went. I mean, we're talking peak Attitude Era. Saw Stone Cold and The Rock, had some beers in the ring. Triple H was out of action because of injury, but he was there in attendance. The Hardy Boys and Lita. The Dudleys came. That's when they were just starting to put people through tables. And so, it was peak Attitude Era. We even had a young lady who thought she was Lita in our section who had to be escorted out because she was flashing everybody, and they had to take her out of the arena.
Oh, really?
So, oh, yeah. It's a great place to take your wife to her first wrestling show, and the girl sitting 6 seats over from her is flashing everybody.
Holy.
Like, sorry, dear. Oh, yeah. So, there's kids around, and parents are covering up their kids' eyes, and this girl's going crazy. So it was, like I said, peak Attitude Era. is what that was. So very, very memorable just for everything that went on. It was quite a night. But
well, that was a different crowd back then also, where it was kind of like being at a rock concert, to be quite honest.
Well, that arena, I don't know what it holds. It's like 20,000 plus for the Blues. And it was packed. I mean, it was, and when I say packed, I mean every seat all the way to the very top, all the way around was filled. There wasn't any tarps. There wasn't anything staged off. Every seat was full. And when that glass shattered for Stone Cold to come out, every single person stood on their feet and went nuts. I mean, you couldn't hear the person next to you. It was exactly like a rock concert. It was crazy. And it was a whole other level of excitement back then.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, it was a good time.
The one I remember, and it's funny how you don't really think about iconic Raws, but I went to Raw's War October 19th, 1998 in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. It was at the Bradley Center.
Okay.
So I've never actually watched the show. So I never really think about it, and I watch all the highlights, and I'm always like, yeah, I don't remember that. So you remember the whole thing where Austin is hunting down Vince, and he has the gun that says 316?
Yeah.
That's the show I'm at.
Are you kidding me? All these years, you never tell me that's the show you're at.
And I didn't really think about it, but as I was going, because you have to jog your memory, I kind of forgot about it. The only thing I always remember was I was pissed off because the end match was supposed to be Kane versus The Undertaker, and it ended up being they end up being DQ'd because they both ran to the back chasing each other and stuff. So it never happened. And I remember being so pissed off that I didn't get to see the match. I totally forgot about the very end where Vince comes out and he holds the gun and Vince pisses himself. And like I said, I had seats that were kind of far away, but I was at that Raw.
That's something else.
I know.
Something else.
And,
wow.
And you don't even think about it, but yeah, that is one of those iconic images of the whole McMahon-Austin feud that pretty much sums up the whole thing. And so here I am, not even thinking about it all these years later, doing my history, thinking and going, oh shit, that can't be the same Raw. And then I start looking at my ticket stub and I look at the date. I'm like, wow, okay. Yeah, so I just found that out.
Yeah, I need to go back. I guess I need to do a little Google search and find that Raw in St. Louis that I was at and pull it up on the network.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I need to do the same.
Just see what I don't remember. Because, like I said, I remember the big names and things like that. And I remember I walked out of there with a Dudley Boys Get the Table t-shirt, which my wife just loved.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. I bought some merch, baby.
I bet she was happy as hell, wasn't she?
Oh, she's used to me. God love her. She doesn't embarrass easily, thank goodness. That's why she's married me.
So if I think more, and I'm trying to remember what year it was. It may have been 99. But in 99, I went to Milwaukee again because I had to see WCW, Monday Nitro.
Yeah, all right.
And the thing that always stood out to me was there was a big brawl because it was Goldberg versus Jeff Jarrett at the end for the final match. And everyone in the back came running out. You name it, the who's who. And for the very end, Gilbert Brown came out to come fight. And Gilbert Brown got a bigger pop in that place than anyone else. But
I bet he did.
But during that, I'm just looking real quick at what I got to see, and this will make you laugh, okay? So I got to see Norman Smiley as the hardcore champion take on Rhonda Singh, IWGP Junior Heavyweight title champion Jushin Thunder Liger. I got to see him wrestle Psychosis.
Oh, but that was a good match.
Yes. And this is on the network, so I go back and look at those. Medusa, she defeated Evan Courageous. Remember when that shit was going on? Oklahoma and Steve Williams defeating Jerry Only and Vampiro. Now, this was right in the hub of shit WCW, by the way. Bret Hart defeated the Total Package Lex Luger for a WCW heavyweight title match. You also had Piper defeating Creative Control.
Wow.
Ming beat Dustin Rhodes. Larry Zbyszko defeated Kurt Hennig. Chris Benoit defeating Kevin Nash with Scott Hall in his corner. Jerry Flynn defeating the Maestro, which, by the way, I interviewed the Maestro before this show. Worst fucking interview I ever did with a wrestler ever. Anyway, sorry about that. He stayed in character the whole time. It was so tough. Sting defeated Scott Hall. Sid Vicious defeats Diamond Dallas Page, and Goldberg defeating Jeff Jarrett. So that was pretty much everything you want from a WCW Nitro. You got to see every big name. But yeah, so that was December 6th, 1999. I remember because I was doing the Under the Ring report. Had started in 97, and I did a lot of interviews with wrestlers all the time. And I remember we got free tickets because I did the show, and I did interview with the Maestro at that time. And me and a couple guys that worked the station, hopped a ride and took off down there and had a blast. We had really good seats too. I mean, we were like right in the center. And only probably like 10 up from the row. So, and right on I think we were on the side. We had to have been camera side. But I've never watched that Nitro either. I should watch that sometime because I forget about the shows I'm at.
Well, I know exactly what you mean. Another memorable house show I went to, and it's memorable because it was both of my boys' first time going to a house show.
Uh-huh.
And I want to say at the time, my youngest son was probably 5 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So he's 12 now. So it's been about 7 years ago. And he was, at the time, he was a Cody Rhodes fan.
Okay.
This is back when he was not ravishing, handsome Cody Rhodes, and he was wearing the mask, and he was coming out and putting the paper bags on people's heads.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that time?
I do. Yeah, I do.
Okay. So they were in Cape Girardeau. And so I got tickets for it over at SEMO and drove over there with the boys. And so we made some signs. They wanted to make some signs, so I helped him make a sign. So I got a picture of him standing in front of the garage holding his Cody Rhodes sign. He had paper bags drawn on it and stuff. And then my other son was 7 at the time. He was a Sin Cara fan because Sin Cara was brand new.
Botchkara.
Exactly. Exactly. So we went over there to the house show, small venue. We were about 8 rows from the ring, right where the wrestlers come out. So they got to see everybody. We got to see Sheamus, got to see Wade Barrett, which Wade Barrett's pretty impressive in person. If you've never been up close to him, he's a pretty good sized boy.
Mm-hmm.
Heath Slater, AJ Lee wrestled Tamina Snuka, and that's when, you get a lot of the younger talent when you go to some of these shows. But Daniel Bryan was there, and he was just won the Money in the Bank. So he had the Money in the Bank briefcase, and this was before the whole Yes movement. So he was still clean cut. He just kind of would stand on the end of the ropes and stick his finger in the air.
Hadn't found himself yet.
Yeah, exactly. So he was still new. There was a special guest appearance by Harley Race. Let's see, Harley Race. Randy Orton ended up finishing off the show. The kids had a great time. It was just more memorable. And they got to see Sin Cara also. And Mark Henry. Mark Henry was there. So, I mean, there was some definite talent at that show for a small house show in Southeast Missouri. But it was memorable for me because that was their first show they got to go to.
Mm-hmm.
The next year, we were going somewhere. We were going to go to Holiday World over in Santa Claus, Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Evansville, Indiana is right on the way, and they were taping SmackDown that night, the night before. And that's when they would tape SmackDowns on Tuesdays and air it on Fridays. So we went. I got tickets. My wife didn't go, but the boys and I went, and we sat 3 rows from the ring, right next to the railing. So everybody that came out. So my then 6-year-old was standing on chairs, high-fiving wrestlers as they came down. And you talk about a heck of a show. They got to see everybody. They got to see the Big Show.
Mm-hmm.
They got to see John Cena give the Big Show attitude adjustment. Tyson Kidd was wrestling then, and he actually stood up on the barrier right in front of my sons, and so they were freaking out over that. And actually, at the time, Brodus Clay and the Funkadactyls were big.
Oh my God!
And when we found our seats, I had an official from WWE stop me, and they said, "Hey, would your boys like to get in the ring and dance with Brodus Clay?" And I said, "Well, let me ask them." I'm like, "Boys, you want to get in the ring and dance with, you know?" And they're like, "No." But they were more. They were just scared, is what it was. They were excited. They were nervous, and they didn't want to do it if I wasn't there with them. So they said no. And the guy's like, "That's okay. We don't want to force them. They didn't want to." But CM Punk was there. That at that point, the Yes movement was going on, and actually he was going through his No movement. So that was even funnier because Daniel Bryan came out and did the No stuff. Alberto Del Rio come out with his car, and I mean, you name it, and we had a great time. Still one of my favorite memories going to a actual, tape show.
Yeah.
Is those boys getting to see like Tyson Kidd standing over him up on the barrier, because they still talk about it. Like, I remember that, so it was a good time.
I'll say, and I remember 1990, I remember seeing a show in Decatur. That was a couple of years later. And I mean, we saw Heart Foundation, Demolition. We saw the Macho Man, Mr. Perfect, Brutus the Barber, all the big names during that time. But that kind of stood out to me at that time. And overall, like I said, I've been to so many different shows here and there. I mean, I remember being at a WCW taping for a Saturday night WCW in Madison, Wisconsin. I think that was in '99. And, dude, it was pretty much the who's who of the B team. I mean, we did see, let's see, let me look at what I've got here. Oh, geez. Vampiro and Psychosis. Eddie Guerrero wrestled some loser. What the hell? Disco Inferno wrestled. Kurt Hennig. Brian Knobbs and Fit Finley went at it. Who else was there? Jim Duggan wrestled Barry Darso. So it tells you what you were looking at right there. And, it was full of every Kidman, Juventud, all the guys who weren't main eventers. And then later, like I said, dude, I went to a show like every 6 months. In '98, I went to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and it was just before Jesse the Body was elected governor. They were handing out Vote for Jesse at the event. It was just a house show. But Bradshaw wrestled D-Lo. The Godwins were still there wrestling DOA. Kane Chains was one of the guys. Owen Hart was the European champion at that time, defeating Goldust. New Age Outlaws were tag champs, and I got to see them versus Cactus Jack and Terry Funk. So I got to see fucking Terry Funk wrestle live. Mark Mero pinned Tom Brandy. I don't even remember Tom Brandy. The Rock was still known as Rocky Maivia, and he was the Intercontinental Champion, and he beat Ken Shamrock. Headbangers defeated the Quebecers, and Steve Austin pinned Triple H. I remember that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that show I mentioned in Evansville, I forgot. They were still taping like their, what they call it, Superstars show.
Mm-hmm.
So they had like 3 matches to start that were starter matches that were being taped for Superstars, and then they changed the ring apron.
Mm-hmm.
So we saw Natalya and the Usos, Zack Ryder. Yeah, Zack Ryder. All those guys were on Superstars.
Yeah.
And, because I forgot about that, because there used to be, you'd go to a show and there'd be like a dark match.
Yeah, I remember that.
They'd have like the tryout for somebody, or like when I went to that Raw in St. Louis, they taped, before Raw started, they taped Sunday Night Heat at that arena, and then changed everything over for when Raw started.
Yeah.
So which was kind of cool. We did have a thing here in town. Jeff Jarrett came with Global Force Wrestling. I guess it's been about 3 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And I took my son to that, and we got to meet Jeff and Karen Jarrett, and we talked about that before, and Kevin Nash.
Yep.
But some of the talent on there have now went on to other things. Hornswoggle was there. He wrestled.
Yep.
Sanjay Dutt wrestled. He's now a backstage guy with. Did he just go to WWE?
Yep, he just did.
Back.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was there. That Congo Kong wrestled. He's been with Impact. Colt Cabana. Colt Cabana was there. A lot of these guys, my son had no idea who they were, but he loved the experience.
Well, and that's the cool part about it.
Town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember I saw a house show in Stevens Point, and that was in September of 2008. And I'm looking at the card right now, and you're going to laugh. So the very first match that was there was Kurt Hawkins and Zack Ryder as a tag team taking on Jesse and Festus.
Speak of the devil.
We just talked about that. The other folks on there, you remember Vladimir Kozlov?
Yes, I do. I do.
So he was there, and he wrestled Jeff Hardy. I saw Finley and Hornswoggle there, Jack Swagger, Shelton Benjamin with MVP. Matt Hardy was the ECW champion at the time, wrestling Mark Henry. And I got to see The Undertaker wrestle, when I missed him the last time, like 10 years before. And so 10 years later, I got to see him wrestle The Big Show, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, I got to see The Undertaker when he was Big Nasty on the motorcycle.
I've
never seen him as the actual Undertaker gimmick.
See, I got lucky and saw the Undertaker gimmick. He came out, did the whole thing, the hat down, had the coat and everything. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's my one regret. That's the one thing I've not seen. I've seen him, on the bike and all that stuff, but never the original gimmick.
But yeah, those are things that shape your thoughts of wrestling and why you like and keep watching wrestling. To me, I mean, if I have to run down how many Hall of Famers I've had the chance to see, and what's funny too is sometimes you forget people that you, like I said, as we're sitting here talking and I was looking at results, totally blocked my mind that I'd actually seen Terry Funk wrestle live. That's pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, that's pretty cool because he's wrestled a lot of years.
I know.
That was one of my regrets when we went to All In is he got sick and wasn't able to make it.
That's right, yeah.
He had been a guy I would have wanted to meet. But, and see, and I'm sitting there on my phone and I don't have access right now to look up some of these. I kind of wish I would have beforehand. I know I'm forgetting things that I'm gonna kick myself for later.
Yeah.
I want to look it up because, we've seen quite a bit. The last show my son and I went to was about a year ago. It was probably in January, and it was back in Cape at SEMO, and it was a loaded house show. I mean, Asuka was just called up to the main roster just shortly before, and so she was there, and Paige had just come back.
Oh, okay.
Absolution. And so she wrestled. It was a 6-woman tag, and it was Paige and Sonya Deville and Mandy Rose against Becky Lynch. I'm trying to think, it was Becky Lynch and Bailey and Sasha Banks.
Yeah.
And then we saw Asuka and and I had that Instagram video of Braun Strowman decking Elias.
I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and Matt Hardy was doing his broken gimmick or just come back with that gimmick. And, it was a lot of fun. And the only downside was my son was not feeling well at the time. He was trying to enjoy the show, and his eyes were getting glassy. He's like, "I'm hot, Dad." I'm like, "Oh crap."
Yeah.
This isn't good. So he didn't get to enjoy it as much as he normally would. But we've been fortunate in the area that we're at to see quite a bit of shows, and I try to make it a point to see more shows than I did growing up because it was just something I didn't do.
No, and the same with us too. I mean, as a kid, you know what? Your parents weren't going to take you to a show. I mean, even though WWF came to our town once every year or so, it wasn't until I was older, you know, and almost high school that I'm like, you know what, I'm going to this.
Yeah.
And I'll bring my brother with me. We're going. So, you know, that's what it was, because when we were young, they weren't into wrestling, didn't care. But, and I'm like that too. I mean, I've got Green Bay, you know, less than an hour and a half away. I mean, I saw SmackDown there in 2016. It's where I got to see AJ Styles, you know, that first year he's with WWE. You know, and that's where Dean Ambrose wrestled him, and Ellsworth showed up. So I got to see a lot of those guys I hadn't, because it seemed like it had been about 10 years, well, probably 8 years since I'd been to a live event. Because there was a lull there where I just got busy. Even though I liked wrestling, I just didn't care enough to go see it. But, you know,
Right.
It's so close, you just got to go, because you never know who's you're going to see or what's going to happen. And, you know, I'd rather go, hey, that was a great, enjoyable moment. So it's what I look at there when it comes to those things. So if you get a chance, you got to get out there and see those live events, because they're totally worth your time.
Yeah, and you know, I will say this, and I've told other people this too. Going to a small live event is sometimes way more enjoyable than going to a big show, because number one, you're closer to the action. There's no cameras on the talent, so the talent don't care if they stay in full character, or they do stay in full character sometimes.
Yeah, they do have a little more fun.
They have a lot more fun. They do a lot more interaction. So if you've got kids that are into it and you can get them up close, 70% of the time, somebody's going to get a high five. They're going to get their sign or poster autographed by the wrestler as they walk through. They're going to, you know, take a selfie with your kid. They're going to do something, catch them outside the arena. They're going to sign something, and they're not going to, you know, get onto you for it.
I will say this.
That's what they're there for.
I will say this, though, too. The Resch Center in Green Bay is a smaller event, even though that's where they hold SmackDowns and Raw. I enjoy watching those live events there more so than ever watch them at the Bradley Center, because the Bradley Center was so big. It was hard to see everything going on. It seems like this one's a little smaller. And even though they're doing a live TV taping or whatever, you have a better idea of what's going on. You see what's going on, and there's not really a bad seat in the house. And sometimes those are cool too when you're in a smaller area and you see a TV show than compared to like in the, you know, Chicago or something like that. It's sometimes it could suck trying to be at a live or televised event. We
went to SIU Arena, which is a small arena.
Yeah.
Even for a state school, it's a small arena, and I thought, all right, I'm gonna pay the money. We're gonna sit up close. So we sat like 3 rows from the ring, but we were at the corner, and so it was great for the guys when they were standing up. But if he had, like with my son, when we had full size adults in front of us, he couldn't hardly see anything because you're looking up at the ring. So the next year we went back, and he's like, can we not sit so close? Which, as a kid, I would have been like, I want to sit down. Close like and so I actually got seats farther back where they kind of angled a little bit.
Yeah.
And then you could see right over everybody's heads, clear view of everything. And he enjoyed it more than when he was down close. But either way, you weren't that far away. You weren't so far up that you couldn't make out what was going on the other side of the ring. You know what I mean? Like the big arenas. You didn't have to watch the screen to see what was going on. You could actually just feel like you were right there watching it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm all for the live events because, like I said, my sons had way more fun at the live events than like the TV tapings because they got time limits and all that stuff, and they got commercial breaks they got to plan for, and they don't have time to do the other stuff.
No, and sometimes you do. You get to see a little more, and I mean. Oh, hell, we even were at the biggest one last year at All In, which was a phenomenal event, even though it was televised for pay-per-view. And, I mean, sometimes it just doesn't matter. It depends on who the talent is and what's going on, because sometimes you don't even notice the commercial breaks and what have you, which is great. Because if you're doing your job, that you should never notice that stuff anyway.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, that's the whole point of it. It's supposed to be entertainment.
Mm-hmm. All right, Tom. Well, there you go. You got to tell everybody about your first live event.
I missed out on a show, so I had to make up for it.
All right, man. Well, that's going to do it for this week's show. Thanks a lot for joining us. As usual, visit us at UTRR Podcast at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you want to tell us about one of your favorite first shows or live events you were at, feel free to tweet to us. We'll talk about it later on. Thanks a lot for joining us here at the Under the Ring Report.
This is Harley Race, and if you want to hear about wrestling and what's happening today, listen to Under the Ring.
Follow the Under the Ring Report on Twitter at UTRR Podcast. You can subscribe to the Under the Ring Report on iTunes, Google Play, and Stitcher, or visit undertheringreport.com. Thanks for listening to the Under the Ring Report.